Hello there, I'm the student, and in this video I'm going to show you what the best culture in the entire game is, and of course why this specific culture is so good. So let's just start right away with the culture. Because even though I loaded in as Castile, as you can see, what I want to talk about is not the Castilian culture, but the Basque culture that you can see is my primary culture right now. As Castile, it's actually very simple to get Basque culture. All you need to do is to integrate Navarra, move your capital to this state over here where two provinces already are Basque culture, and then you just have to destate everything else for once and switch to Basque culture, and after that half state everything. Of course, if you do it, for example, as Castile or something, it comes at its cost, right? To gain half states instead of full states, basically. But you have to think about the opportunities that gives you, even in the early game already. You're going to see that in a second. But the first interesting thing is that Basque culture nations can actually form two different, very strong tags and endgame tags. And for that matter, you're going to see what I'm talking about. I can form the Spanish nation diplomatically because I'm Castile, and militarily because I'm Basque culture, as well as I can form the French nation. Even though I'm not French culture, I'm Basque culture, which is part of the Iberian group, but I can still form the French nation. Now, of course, that's just the first interesting thing about this culture, but still, I mean, if you are able to form France without the French culture, that of course means that you can have all the bonuses of the Iberian culture and of the French mission tree, which is one of the best mission trees in the entire game, without, of course, culture flipping after forming France. The second reason why the Basque culture is actually such an amazing culture is that it actually is part of the Iberian culture group. And what that means is that you can actually do holy orders. Okay, so you can see all of those Iberian holy orders that you can have if you are Iberian primary culture, of course. By the way, a lot of these military ones are actually not even tied to your religion. So even if you are like Protestant later or something, or Orthodox religion, whatever, you will still have access to these orders, to a few of these. The only thing you need to do for that is either accept Leonese, Castilian, Catalan, or Portuguese culture. Or, of course, all of them if you want to have different holy orders. But if you just accept them and have your primary culture in the Iberian culture group, then you can have holy orders even as a non-Catholic country. And these orders are so strong because they, of course, give you a lot of development. So, for example, in this case, if I click one time this holy order for 50 mil points, I will gain 4 mil development for that. Now, if I click that normally, you can see 1 mil development will cost me 50 already. You basically develop your country very cheap with these orders. But on top of that, they also give quite strong modifiers. So you can see, for example, local defender dice roll, which is very useful for these mountain forts on the border with France, for example. For example, institution growth, which is really important if you want to get the Renaissance institution, for example, faster, that it actually grows your institution in all of the provinces by 0.5 per month. So that is one of the reasons why the Basque culture is such a great culture, because it actually can literally do that, right? It can do holy orders. The next reason has also to do with the Iberian culture, and that is because the Iberian culture is actually a pretty large culture. Of course, the entirety of the Iberia region is Iberian culture, which means that if you, for example, play as an outsider, whatever, like England or something, who, by the way, also starts with a Basque province over here, and then you flip to Basque culture, and then conquering all of the Iberia region will be way, way easier and faster And of course, you have a lot of provinces from the start, basically, that are your culture group, where you gain only way reduced penalties to non-accepted cultures, right? So, for example, if you have a look on, the Irish culture group or something, this is like a very weak culture group. You have very few provinces and also very shitty provinces, let's be honest. Whereas the Castilian or Iberian culture group has actually very valuable, high depth, and a lot of provinces that would become your culture group and that are also auto-accepted once you become an empire. Now we come into the interesting thing, because the Iberian culture and the Basque culture have very unique government reforms. And we start off with the very unique and very, very strong Tier 1 reform that is only available to Navarra, or if you are Basque primary culture. So it's the Courts of Navarra. You see, the Courts of Navarra is, I cannot even say how crazy this is, but this is a crazy strong reform, and I would even say it's one of the top tier 1 reforms in the entire game, which is because of all of these modifiers. You see them. The modifiers themselves are already crazy. You can see -2 national unrest, +1 diplomat, which is very rare to get from government reforms at all, right? A little bit reduced max absolutism, but let's be honest, how important is that? And -20% cost of advisors with rulers' culture. So probably Basque, but whatever, right? If you have such advisor, 20% reduction is insane, okay? Especially if you combine that with other modifiers, of course, this stacks up really great, really fast. And then on top of that, we come to the nobility, which is also a very, very special scenario, because this government reform not only gives the nobility reduced influence, -10%, but also it enables a parliament. And now the thing is, most of the time, if you enable a parliament, for example, on tier 6 or something, it gets rid of the nobility estate. As you can see, disables nobility estate. This reform of Forts of Navarra, it doesn't get rid of the nobility, okay? So you can see I have still the bonuses of the nobility, mainly the admin points, the manpower recovery speed and so on. But I also have a parliament, which by this point I think most of the E4 players know how overpowered having a parliament is. And you will have a parliament on tier 1. Okay, so theoretically, on day 1 of your campaign, you can have a parliament, and that of course means you can also add your provinces to the parliament that you can see give them a ton of really nice bonuses. But on top of that, of course, you will gain parliament debates, and these debates, man, they are really crazy strong. You can see national unrest, another -2, which together already brings you to -4 unrest, national unrest. Culture conversion cost, admin power attack cost, advisor cost, that's what I'm talking about, right? This 10% combined with the 20% from here is already a huge impact on your economy and your mana generation. Then of course stuff like stability, manpower recovery speed, general leaders without upkeep and so on, right? But of course the main thing is that if you are at war, you can get a parliament issue that gives you a ton of manpower based on your parliamentary seats manpower provinces. So what you want to do is basically whenever you have a parliament, just add everything to a parliament that you can to a parliamentary seat, of course. And then whenever you are at war, you will gain like 20,000. 30,000, 40,000 manpower just by passing one debate. And yeah, that is really the reason why a parliament that early especially is so insanely strong. And I think we can really agree that the combination of all of these modifiers with the parliament really makes this tier 1 reform that is culture based for the Basque culture a top tier government reform in the entire game. But that's not even all. There are more advantages of being in the Iberian Culture Group. For example, the Council of the Indies reform on tier 3 that lets you get way more treasure fleet income. Treasure fleet, of course, if you want to colonize, but also on the other part, 5% global trade power, reduced liberty desire on the other continents. All of these modifiers are really crazy strong for a colonial or naval gameplay, right? So this is of course also unique to the Iberian Culture Group. Then we have another one, which I can't show you as Castile, because Castile has a unique one that basically counters that. But let's just go into Navarra real quick, because I prepared that for this moment. That there is the tertial companies. Not only do you get a unique tier 1 reform with a parliament, holy orders that only very few nations have, you can form France, which you typically cannot do with another culture, but also on top of that you now gain a unique unit type just for the Iberian culture, which is of course tertius. For those of you who don't know, the tertius actually reduce the shock damage received by 30% for that unit, of course. But on top of that, you can see this reform is simply crazy strong on the modifiers as well. You can see it gives you 0.5 yearly army tradition, plus 0.2% yearly army professionalism, just passive growth of professionalism, which is of course a huge impact on your army quality. And then on top of that, you also gain the ability to recruit 10% of your force limit as tertial companies. And last but not least, let me switch back to Castile, because there is one more very unique thing for the Basque culture, which is the naval doctrine. Of course, the Iberian culture also has a naval doctrine, which I think is like Marines force limit and treasure fleet income or something, which is also already quite nice. But in my opinion, this one is way, way better because of one single actual modifier, which you're going to see in a second, because the naval doctrine is called Basque Marines, and the modifiers that I give is first of all National Sailors and Marines force limit plus 25%, so really nice for naval and colonial gameplay. Also very interesting, combat penalty when landing -1, which also counts if you are landing without any Marines, of course. So actually a military modifier for your army in your naval doctrine over here if you want. And on top of that, a very specific one, which is called allows recruitment of explorers and conquistadors. And the reason why this is so interesting is that, first of all, this also allows you to discover sea tiles with your explorers, even if you don't take exploration ideas. So what I would recommend you to do with that is, of course, you want to probably play a colonial game, right? Even if you form France, you would probably want to play a colonial game. But what I would recommend you to do is to not waste a slot on exploration ideas, because it only gives one colonist a little settler growth, but nothing special. Instead, only take expansion ideas and use the Basque Marines naval doctrine to explore. And also very interesting is, of course, you can get explorers with the privilege for the burghers, which is called Grand New World Charters, but you can't get conquistadors as a Western tech country without any missions or something, right? So with that naval doctrine, you can actually also recruit conquistadors, which means that you can send them to hunt for the 7 cities. And even if you don't find any 7 cities on that hunt, it is still a very overpowered way to gain monarch points, because there are really lots of events that give you monarch power when you are on a hunt on the 7 cities. And that only works with, obviously, conquistadors, right? So that literally means that this naval doctrine not only gives you a military modifier of sailors, marines, and combat penalty reduction, but also the ability to gain mana from that naval doctrine. And I think that alone makes it one of the best naval doctrines in the entire game. But anyways, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this little talk about the best culture in game. Let me know in the comments if you agree or if you say that there is a better culture, which honestly, I'm not really sure if there is a better culture. That's why I made this video, obviously. But anyways, we are going to see as always on another Monday.